Hello, thank you for tuning into the Natural Health Rising podcast. My name is Rachel Smith. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and I've helped hundreds of people naturally reverse symptoms of autoimmune diseases and other health challenges, from digestive issues to hormone imbalances. And in these weekly episodes, you're going to learn from myself and top health experts from around the world about functional medicine and holistic health tips to help you rise to your healthiest, happiest self. On today's episode, I have Maria Yakimchuk with me. Maria is a certified transformational EFT coach who empowers moms to rise, heal, and thrive by embracing their authentic power and inner wisdom, deeply healing themselves, and manifesting the motherhood of their dreams. With her unique coaching approach that blends EFT, also known as tapping, self-compassion work, and deep knowledge of maternal mental health, she helps moms heal their own childhood traumas, break free from dysfunctional familial patterns, and eliminate shame and guilt so that they can thrive in motherhood and create new, healthy family norms for themselves and their children. Welcome to the show, Maria.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you for having me.
I am pretty excited to talk to you because EFT is something that I actually use a little bit with my clients as well. And I've seen it really, really help people from my end, people who have autoimmune diseases and chronic illnesses. And then you use it more so for a lot of women and mothers. But for our listeners out there who don't know what EFT is, or also known as tapping, can you explain what is this tool?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So EFT it's called tapping because that's kind of what we're doing. We're tapping on certain acupressure points on our body. And really those points are centered kind of around our head and the upper body. And then sometimes we also bring in the finger points as well. So it really can be as little as 9 points are used in the healing process, or it could be as many as kind of 20 because you're bringing in all 10 fingers. But really, it's a very simple process where we are rhythmically tapping on these points on our body that are actually directly on our nervous system. So we get direct access to our nervous system. So we stimulate it, we send electromagnetic charges to our brain to allow our brain to switch from sympathetic response, which is kind of the fight or flight, go, go, go response, into the parasympathetic response, which is the relaxation, the rest and digest response, which is something that I think is very elusive for a lot of us. And kind of the reason why a lot of us have a lot of health issues is that we're constantly in fight or flight, and EFT helps us manage that on the daily basis. So because it's such a simple practice with so few points, you could do it daily for 5-10 minutes a day. You could do it once a week as a big healing session. You could do it a few times a week in like 20-minute periods. It's very versatile. It can be used by anyone, starting from little children all the way through the lifespan. You can use it on animals as well. It is just such a fantastic tool that works with our nervous system.
I didn't know that you could use it on animals.
Yeah,
That's
you can. Yeah.
interesting. Do you use it on any pets that you have?
I've tried it with my dogs a couple of times. They did kind of look at me weirdly, like, what are you doing to me? But they do become a little bit more relaxed and kind of sleep a little bit. So yeah, you could use it with animals. The same way with children and babies. Like sometimes they won't let you tap on them, so you'll tap through yourself or through a teddy bear. So again, such a versatile practice that you can apply to anyone.
That's amazing. So depression and anxiety are a couple things that can be really deeply rooted issues. So how is this applied to these issues, and how does this go beyond the surface level symptoms, but actually address the root cause of some of these mental health challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So, depression and anxiety in mental health, we view them as, standalone diagnoses and sicknesses. And, aside from being an EFT coach, I'm also a practicing therapist. So I kind of
Okay.
see it in the therapeutic way. I have to put these diagnoses for insurance purposes and everything. But my personal belief is that depression and anxiety are never the root cause of anything. They are a symptom of whatever is going on with your body. Usually it is trauma related. So it could be
Mm.
childhood trauma, it could have been something else that has happened. Sometimes when people are kind of born more predisposed to anxiety or depression, it might not be that, they've suffered trauma during birth, but sometimes it could have been actually generational trauma, could have been something in utero that their mom was struggling with. I mean, the field of research is growing in us understanding how our genes kind of come about and express what they express, because sometimes it doesn't seem like there's any real cause as to why is one child born more anxiously wired and the other one isn't, right, from the exact same parents, but something different was going on, maybe for the mom, even for the dad, right, at the time. And so this kind of our DNA takes that in, and that's sort of the field of epigenetics, where there's genes that pass down the pool, the generational traumas, and how, because we're so malleable, we could change it in our own lifetime as well. So just because we came into this world with a specific set of genes and certain things got activated doesn't mean we can't change them. So that's sort of my kind of take on anxiety and depression, that they're just a symptom of an underlying issue that's going on. And the issue could be that you were born with a more sensitive nervous system, so you're more prone to anxiety. How do we help your nervous system regulate down a little bit so it's not so hypervigilant and seeking everything in the environment to react to? And that's what EFT really helps with. We help the nervous system switch into that parasympathetic response, where it is calmer. So the calmer it becomes, the more resilient it becomes, the less it reacts to the outside as much. And sort of same with depression. Depression is sort of the opposite end of anxiety. It's when we're in some ways too much in that parasympathetic and we're
Mm.
shut down and kind of we're hopeless. There's no energy, right? It's that hypoarousal state versus the hyperarousal state. And EFT works both ways. It's about bringing your nervous system online to base level, so we can tap out of that hypo more into kind of your normal baseline functioning. And again, depression, usually it's rare when people are born predisposed to depression. Usually things happen in life and they depress us. Might be just born with a personality that tends more towards the negative, and then lots of negative things happen in our life. And builds and builds, right? And so with EFT, because it's not just tapping, we're tapping, but also talking through what's underneath there, right? It allows us to talk through these events that maybe were traumatizing for us, scary, made us believe something wrong about ourselves, created these schemas as to how we approach the world. And as we tap and talk through it and figure it out, we're allowing our brain and our body and our nervous system process it in a different way, and then reframe it in a way where our body just takes it in of like, oh, hey, I can believe this. This is good.
Mm. Can you give a little bit more of a specific example of that? Like, let's say somebody did have something traumatic happen. What is that vocalization, the verbiage like when you're tapping through a session?
Yeah, so for me, the way I run it, it's very individual. I don't ever use any like pre-scripted general things, because
Mhm.
every situation is individual. So when I tap with my clients, I always get history from them of like what's happening. If we're tapping on a specific event, it's usually like I ask them as many details of the event as possible, because I kind of want them to bring it up as if it's like they're experiencing it right now in a way that's safe. For some people, it's not safe, it's too activating. So we have to go kind of around it and pretend it's like a movie or something like that, where
Mm.
they can distance themselves. And then we talk through that event as we're tapping through the memories, through the fears, through what might they have been feeling at the time. And it's kind of a mixture of what the clients tell me they kind of felt, and then me using my knowledge and intuition to kind of figure out what's underneath there, what's the fear underneath there, right? So it
Mhm.
really is, we just kind of talk through it and tap through it. And then typically when we go through this negative piece, I hear a lot from the clients that they feel lighter. It's almost like a weight has been lifted off of them. And then, after we did that work, then we come in with the more positive piece of, reframing of, I am safe, right? Like my body is safe, or like, I'm successful, whatever it is that we're tapping on. So we bring in sort of the positive piece. But sometimes it takes a while to get to the positive piece, because the trauma is so deep that we can go multiple sessions just tapping on the negative, on the trauma, going through the event. And kind of getting pieces off of it before we can put in kind of the positive pieces, the reframes in there.
I love that. Um, so you work with a lot of mothers, and as you're helping them through this unresolved trauma, how does the unresolved trauma affect motherhood in the first place? Like if they haven't dealt with this yet.
Oh yeah, so we're talking about anxiety and depression. That's postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety for you. It's usually some sort of trauma, big T, little t, whatever things we heard about ourselves, whatever sort of
Mm,
limiting and negative beliefs we have kind of taken in, they're going to come out in motherhood. Because I think what we don't talk enough about is no matter how great your birth was, it could have been like a magical thing. It is still a trauma to the body. It still shakes up
mm,
your whole system. It's a trauma to your nervous system. And that shakeup brings up things from the past. Right. So what we're seeing is, especially when moms have traumatic births in any way, shape, or form, right? Or they didn't feel supported during birth, didn't feel heard, that adds new pieces to probably a lifetime of not being supported and not being heard. And that's when we get moms who are super anxious and hyper vigilant over their child, right? They can't sleep. They have to watch, is their child breathing? They can't step away from their child. We get the depression where they're really either sad or they're really angry and they have no energy and they doubt themselves. They think that they're not meant for this. They're not good mothers, right? Like all this chatter that goes on in the brain. And really, the kind of the birth really just catapulted that to the front. It's always been there. It just maybe before kids, we were able to suppress it a lot more and kind of push it to the side and probably manifest it in some different way, but at least we didn't hear that chatter. Now, when kids come into play, all of that comes up to the surface, and that's where we see all of this kind of
mhm,
happening for moms. And that's really what I work with in my practice, and both in therapy and in coaching, is working through a lot of these birth traumas, a lot of these negative beliefs and fears and self-esteem. And there's also natural motherhood things of kind of losing yourself, not feeling like yourself because you are a different woman once you kind of go through this, and rediscovering who you are, and
mm.
piecing your own traditions on top of old traditions, right? Like there's just so much happening that it's really easy to get lost in this and to start experiencing issues like depression, anxiety, OCD, PTSD, like all sorts of different things come out.
Yeah. Do you have your own personal story with any of this?
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why I started this. A I had postpartum depression that actually started in pregnancy. I didn't realize that. Nobody caught that either. But the way that felt is I was really excited. This was a wanted pregnancy we were planning for. I was super
Hmm.
excited when I got pregnant. And then somewhere like mid-second trimester, my mood just dropped. I was really sad all the time, depressed, not excited anymore, just going through all these like depression symptoms, like spending so much time crying. I remember this instance, my and this happens in pregnancy, but I think this was a little bit more than that. My husband and I, we were going to go out for dinner, and I was like, I don't know, week 27, 28. So, visible belly, not huge. Nothing was really hurting that much yet. Um, and I don't remember what sent me off. I started crying, and I was crying for like an hour. And then I ended up telling him, like, no, I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to stay here and cry. Right. Like,
Aw.
right. So I had that. Then I had my birth, which ended up being traumatic because we started in the birth center. And then labor wasn't progressing. They checked me. They're like, something feels weird. They sent me to the hospital. Turns out my son turned breech mid-labor.
Hmm.
Nobody knew that. So immediate C-section. So again, the trauma of birth there, loss of autonomy, right? Completely different place. Total shock of the fact that like my birth plan just went out the window, right?
Yeah.
Didn't have the nurses were good. My anesthesiologist was terrible. So there was that experience. And then because, C-section is a surgery and they give you pretty heavy drugs, I felt completely numbed out. So I didn't actually bond with my son whatsoever. So like they took him out, and I was just like, okay, well, I want to go to sleep because I've been up for 24 hours at
Oh,
this. Like, I don't care, right? And then, and then issues just keep going. And we had issues breastfeeding with like, oh, he's not gaining weight. If you don't feed him formula, we're going to hospitalize him, right? Like all this, right? So not only does my kind of trauma gets activated where I'm just like, okay, I'm not good at this. I can't do this. My depression came in the way of like, I need somebody with me at all times because I'm not capable of taking care of this baby. Like husband, mom didn't care, but needed another adult. Like I doubted myself so much for being able to take care of him. Then anxiety popped in because we were weighing him before every feed and after every feed. So it felt like, somebody was grading me every single time. So again, I'm a pretty anxiously wired person myself, perfectionist. It was always important for me to get good grades in school. Okay, now I'm doing this with my kid, gets activated, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't realize that was happening. And even when my husband was trying to tell me that something's wrong, I denied it. So I never went to the doctor, never talked about it, never got any help. So that was the pieces there. Then another piece of my anxiety is I was raging. I was yelling, I was throwing things, like very little could set me off. Like everybody I think in the house was scared of me. My dogs, like, the
Mm-hmm.
baby didn't really do it much towards him, so he didn't really feel it. But like my dogs were scared of me because I would take it out on them. My husband got the brunt of it. So just so much of that came out. And then, I felt like I started coming out of it almost 2 years later. Felt like I started coming out of it and I got pregnant again. That one was very unexpected. And that was a completely opposite experience where because it was unexpected, I wasn't excited about it in the beginning, was very actually tearful and sad because I just started feeling like, okay, I'm becoming a person. And now here I go again. But what a different experience. I didn't develop depression in pregnancy there. So actually, as my pregnancy went on, I got more excited. Despite the fact that the pregnancy itself was so much more difficult. I had a lot of pain, became almost immobile like towards the end of the pregnancy, just like lots of pain. Then, I had my second son via VBAC. So it wasn't traumatic in the sense that like it was exactly what I wanted, but it was a very difficult birth. It took me a very long time to recover, like physically, even though they told me I didn't lose much blood, it seemed like I did. I was really weak for a very long time. And then, and then I have a toddler and a baby. So, things were okay until our baby stopped sleeping. He basically, for first, it started about 4 months. So for almost 8 months, my husband and I didn't really sleep. He first started getting up at 4 a.m. Then when he stopped doing that, he would just not sleep the whole night. He'd wake up at 1:30 and not go to sleep till 6:30. And that was our life. And then, and then I have a
Mm-hmm.
toddler who I need to take off to school. So it's like there's no sleep. So I started developing depression again there because of the lack of sleep. And again, the anger came out. And here I was started taking it out on the kids, on both of them. Like I'd be angry at the baby for not sleeping, I'd be angry at my toddler for, being a toddler, being really needy and just and he's also neurodivergent, so he was extremely needy and very volatile in his emotional expression, and I couldn't handle it because I was so volatile, right? Like I sometimes would sit there and cry and be like, well, I'm no better than my eldest because I feel as emotionally stable as a 3-year-old right now.
Mm-hmm.
um and then the depression lingered and stayed. I tried going back to a therapist. It didn't do much for my depression, to be honest. Tried looking at all sorts of things, like tried functional medicine, right? Like we hear about all these herbals and everything, and I'm like taking the herbals, and I'm like, nothing's working. My depression is just getting worse and worse. And on top of everything else, post my second son, I got PMDD. I got my migraines went from being episodic to chronic. So I was just a mess and falling apart, to be honest. And I was kind of grasping for anything I could find. And that's where I found the EFT certification program. The first part of the program was learning about, healing yourself. And a lot of our work was working on ourselves. We traded sessions. So I did a lot of work. Once I started doing that work, healing myself and everything, and then seeing how deep all of this went, I was amazed. But the truth was that after about 6 months, I started feeling better enough where I felt more stable. And in less than a year, I felt like I completely came out of the depression. And I really felt like, just somebody lifted a veil and I could see colors. I could be happy.
Mm,
I can find joy in things, right? Something that I didn't think was possible. So that's what EFT did for me. On top of that, cured my PMDD, right? Because
mm,
while we think about PMDD as purely hormonal, it's not. There's a big mental health component to it. And I think depending for which one is stronger for who, right? You heal the mental health, you might not be as sensitive to the hormone fluctuation anymore. And that's what was happened with me when I healed a lot of this feminine trauma, birth trauma, like all of that, it just disappeared. Like it wasn't there anymore, not even really PMS very much. So, you know, as we were talking before, like EFT, it could be applied across the board for so many different things.
mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, a lot of people think that if they just take some supplements for their stress or anxiety or depression or whatever it is, that it's going to fix that problem. But I try and remind people that they're supplements. They're not replacements for addressing whatever else is going on. And so many times stress is one of the main components, or trauma, one of the main components of hormonal imbalances. I mean, there's other things too. There's the gut things and if you're not eating a healthy diet and moving your body and all of these basic things, but I see it frequently with a lot of women who are overly anxious, depressed, all of these other things. That, like you said, is really the trigger for some of these serious hormonal imbalances. But
Mhm.
I'm curious if you do currently use any other lifestyle tools or nutrition or anything for yourself or your clients that you also think have helped in addition to the EFT.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started my EFT journey, I think I actually started it a little bit before I started working with a functional medicine provider. So I very much was working on, healing my gut through supplements and diet changes and things like that. And what I felt was that EFT enhanced whatever work I was doing with the supplements, that
Mhm.
before I really started seeing movement with EFT, I wasn't seeing any movement with the supplements at all. Like it was, everybody's like, oh, take ashwagandha and you're going to be calm. I mean, before like I started really calming my nervous system down, like it wasn't touching it, right? But after I started working through some of these things, then the ashwagandha and all the other kind of calming things with like reducing cortisol, because obviously, as you can imagine, my cortisol was through the roof. I would wake up in the middle of the night, not go
Mm,
back to sleep, like right, all these typical symptoms that we talk about with women that I think a lot of women, especially in their 30s and 40s, are experiencing currently, right? I was
mhm,
having all of those symptoms and the supplements weren't touching it. But with EFT, they were working. I mean, I try really hard to lead as healthy of a lifestyle as I can, being a mom and being busy. I prioritize getting outside every day. Luckily, we have a dog. So, he kind of makes it possible for me to come out. No excuses, right? I try to exercise the best I can, but again, not much time. And I don't know, for me, it's because I'm a migraine sufferer or because of something else. If I go too heavy on the exercise, it depletes me rather than activates me. So I need kind of shorter. So I've realized I need shorter workout routines in order to feel healthy. And that's kind of what I do to support myself. I've kind of added things to, like, my coffee is filled with collagen, and lately I've added colostrum to it. I'm still working with a functional medicine provider to try to help balance some of the things because my gut is still not functioning as well as it could be and not absorbing nutrients the way that it should. So yeah, absolutely. I don't just do one thing. I try to do different things. I also, have my own therapist as well, and I work with coaches, right? So like trying to live the way that I tell my clients to live is to add different things into your life, because one tool is not likely to change everything, right? Like
mhm.
EFT is very powerful, it can actually change a lot even on its own, but you get so much better results if you apply different things to what you're trying to fix.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. You also deal with, or mothers also deal with a lot of shame and guilt around things. Can you give some examples around how this comes up in their lives and um, how they can move through or eliminate some of those feelings?
Yeah, so I mean, been there too, still dealing with it actively, right? The guilt, I think, is hard to escape because especially nowadays with social media and just so much access to information, right? We can feel guilty about anything because
Mm,
no matter how you're parenting, no matter what you're doing, you are wrong. Somebody's going to tell you you are wrong, right? So then we feel
yeah.
guilty. We're not doing enough for our kids. They're watching too much TV. I'm not entertaining them enough. I'm not doing this, right? There's like bombardment of kind of this current events, and then we have to deal with family that raised, us in a very different environment. They have a completely different kind of view on it, and so they guilt you into doing things another way. So we're just, as mothers, we're bombarded by guilt. So I don't think there's a single mom that doesn't have guilt from like, oh, I left the baby to go to work, right? Like I'm a horrible mother, or well, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm also terrible because, maybe I'm lazy or something like that, right? Like there's just because there's so many messages that are mean and mean-spirited aimed at moms. So that's where the guilt comes in. And shame, I think shame underlies all of us, and especially with women, we honestly, we're shamed for existing in our bodies, right? Like if you think about, especially, you and I are both in the US, and the US does have a pretty strong kind of Christian Catholic influence
Mm,
here, right? Women are sinful, right? In the Christian religion, their bodies are sinful, right? Like, so of course, where should be ashamed just to exist? So we become, shame sits underneath pretty much everything. So it's not usually something we work on first, but it's almost always comes out in a memory or something that someone heard when they were younger. I always talk about that. I'm originally from Ukraine, and the way the Soviet bloc used to parent, still kind of parents that way, was they literally had phrases of when you did something wrong, of like, you should be ashamed of yourself. Like the amount of times I remember my parents telling me for doing something of, you should be ashamed of yourself, right? That
hmm.
gets ingrained into our mind. And
Oh, yeah.
guess what happens? We become ashamed of ourselves for just existing. So yeah, I think shame and guilt just permeates everything. It's like in there, and you really got to
Hmm.
dig to find it, to unearth it, heal it, and then you feel better. Like I used to have a lot of shame around the fact of how I reacted to my children. I was, since my depression lasted for a good 6 years, I was very explosive and rageful, and I would yell at them a lot, and then I would go into these, I think what first started as guilt spirals and then started as shame spirals, where I would sit there being ashamed of myself, immobilized by it, unable to do anything for the rest of the day, right? And how many of us go through that? And with EFT, I was finally able to start clearing that. And it would sometimes be a lot of these sessions of, I would drop off my children, sit down and start tapping for like an hour with just tears streaming down my face, right? Like saying like horrible things about myself, but like saying that released it. And
Yeah.
then I no longer feel that way. Now I'm kind of like, well, sometimes sure, I'm still kind of still a little bit more of a yeller than I would like to be, but sometimes it's warranted. Sometimes, as a parent, I have to put down rules, and if my kids can't hear me at a normal volume, like I got to do something, right? But it's definitely less, and it's not coming out as much of this place of like, I'm so dysregulated, I don't know what to do with myself, right?
Right.
So yeah, shame and guilt are so heavy.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up a few things here, like social media, for example, and like making people feel like they're not good enough and they're not doing enough. And I tell clients all the time, like unfollow accounts if you start to get those thoughts, or take a social media detox for a few weeks or a month and kind of reset your baseline of your happiness and your dopamine levels. But also realizing that perfection doesn't exist. I had a client for many months keep bringing up the fact, like it took me a while to understand, okay, what is happening here? She kept coming back to like she wanted this perfection, this perfect healing where everything was, she's 100%, nothing, like amazing, which yes, we can all heal our bodies and get super healthy, and we can feel great and have a normal healthy happy lifestyle. But I finally realized she needed to hear that perfection doesn't exist and that nobody is really going to fully heal. Like you just gave a really good example of how you said, like, I still kind of yell at my kids sometimes, but sometimes that's warranted. Or, maybe I we'll have a little bit of anxiety flare up or something, right? But then we can use a tool like EFT to bring that back down or regulate the nervous system, or change our diet again, or work through these things. Like healing is not linear, and I don't think that there ever is like a full end goal to anything. It's really like adopting this new lifestyle where we're using tools and lifestyle changes and nutrition and things to just feel the best that we can feel with where we're at. So yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah.
make that comment on that. Um, are there any misconceptions about EFT?
Misconceptions, I think, as it's not widely acceptable, let's say, by the psychological community yet. It's still like kind of like this fringe, and it's considered kind of in the energy, healing, metaphysical, spiritual realm, right? So it's like some people are afraid to touch it. I've had some people who would choose not to work with me because they felt that it competed with their religion. Right. And again,
Uh-huh.
I don't make anybody do anything that they feel doesn't work with them, but there's absolutely nothing about EFT that should compete with anyone's religion. You're literally tapping into your own body and accessing your own body, your own body's resources. We're not bringing in, spirits, souls, or anything. Like we
Mm-hmm.
can, sure. Like, my program was very metaphysically oriented. So it could go very into a very different realm, but let's say when I use it in the therapy office, I don't bring any of that stuff in. I only bring the neuroscience in, and the fact that, like, let's look at it very simply. You have a nervous system. The nervous system's endings come out everywhere in your body. Different parts of your body are going to hold different stress, and different parts of our body are attached to different emotions, right? And we tap on those pieces, and emotions come out, and our body speaks to us. Like, there's nothing magical about that. This is just learning to tune into yourself and talk to yourself, right? So that's kind of one of the bigger misconceptions that I felt, is that it's like too fringy, or it'll compete with someone's religion because it's not kind of in alignment. And that's fine. Not every tool is going to be in alignment with everyone, but again, it is a simple body conversation tool, is how I look at it. And you can have very deep conversations with your body. You can choose how deep to go, right? And what you
Mm-hmm.
access. And then again, because there hasn't been enough research yet, because this isn't a pill, right? So you can research this. There's not much money that's going to come out of it if you
Mm-hmm.
prove that it really works, right? There's not enough studies yet for the psychological community to come out and be like, yes, this works. Right. Simply because of that, not because it doesn't work. It actually does work. And it really annoys me when, if you type in EFT and you look at something like Wikipedia, right, it'll describe to you what EFT is and what it does and everything. And at the end, it'll say, but it's not supported by science. So you should, like, basically, you shouldn't be doing this. Like, it doesn't work. And same
Right.
on like either WebMD or something like, it's the same thing. It'll go through how it works, what it does, and then no, basically, this is not a supportive tool. Like that, those kind of things to me are like, well, just because it's not a supported tool doesn't mean it doesn't work, right? It actually works really well.
Yeah. Oh, that stuff frustrates me. I haven't looked in a while, but I think Wikipedia says something about functional medicine being quackery. And, it's
Um,
like, okay, well, I've helped hundreds of people put symptoms and diseases into remission. So sure, it's quackery. It's
yeah,
it's really unfortunate that it says that, but this is why this podcast is here too, to share this free
yeah.
information with people so that they can hear all of these stories and hear these tools and see what actually works, and then apply some of this stuff in their own lives. Um, okay. Any other final thoughts on tapping, EFT, anything that you feel like you really want people to hear?
Yeah, so I want you to think of tapping as something you can add to your toolbox. Like, as I said, I used it in conjunction with functional medicine, and I thought that they worked together as an amazing synergy, like really amplified each other, which was great. Um, Also, think about tapping as an easy tool to use. You can use it as little as 5 minutes a day for managing your stress. And it is important to manage our stress for so many different reasons, right? Like, I know that the podcast also talks a lot about autoimmune disease, right? Like, we're
Mm-hmm.
finding research that supports that most people with autoimmune disease have had some sort of trauma in their life. The ACE
Yeah.
score is high. Like, it comes from our nervous system just being on edge all the time to then start affecting our immune system response, and everything just gets dysregulated and the signals just get mixed, right? So think about the fact that a lot of your physical ailments, especially chronic ones, have some sort of an emotional underpinning, meaning that there is something that dysregulated your nervous system so much that it started malfunctioning and you started having these aches and pains, things like fibromyalgia, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you go to a regular doctor, there's no cure, right? Because nobody knows where is this coming from. Really, this is your nervous system talking to you and saying, I am so fried with all the trauma that I don't know what to do with this, right? And we need to heal me because no amount of pills are going to help, right?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I think about EFT is that it does promote actual healing. And it's not perfect, kind of like you said. Like, I always set my clients up for success, that like it is not going to be linear. You're not going to be going up, up, up. It's going to be very up and down, up and down. There'll be things that'll happen in your life that'll completely throw you off, and you're going to feel like you're back where you were. But the truth is, you're not. You're at a different level.
Mm-hmm.
But also healing is, I always talk to everybody about like being an onion. We're
Mm-hmm.
peeling layers off to get to the core, right?
Right.
So it can take forever to get there, or you may never get there. But it's about getting as close to the core as possible, about optimizing your health, not having it perfect, which, again, I know a lot of people come in with that, like you were saying, your client, right? Like, we all want perfection. We want to be healed, and healed means I'm basically a Zen Buddha, nothing touches me, and I'm super healthy.
Yeah.
That's not possible, especially in the modern Western society. Like, we will never get there. There's just so much in our environment that won't allow us. That doesn't mean we can't do better. Doesn't mean we can't be healthier and feel better, right? That's really all we're striving for, is to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be within the constraints of what we have around us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If someone is at home listening and they want to just maybe try a little, like a quick few taps and see what it feels like, will they get an effect if they don't say anything? And is there like a couple points that you could verbally say for people to kind of experience, like, okay, what does this feel like? And will that have an effect on the nervous system at all?
So I think even just tapping without saying anything will absolutely have an effect, because again, it's about the fact that we're activating the electromagnetic charges in your nervous system. It's like you're bringing it online. If literally you want to do just one point, and you
Mm-hmm.
could do one point, it's the karate chop, and which is the fleshy side of your hand, and you could just literally just tap that, and
Okay.
you could just, not even say anything. Or if you are kind of like, let's say you're anxious, literally all you have to do is say my anxiety, right?
Mm.
My anxiety, my anxiety, my anxiety, right? That's all you can do. And you can tap on the same point for 5 minutes saying my anxiety, and then see what comes up, right? The truth is, with when you're just starting tapping, in 5 minutes, the likelihood that you're going to see a huge effect, not very likely, right? Some people are also really blocked, and it takes them a really long time to get to the point that they're feeling something. So this is something that I noticed in myself, but I also noticed with clients. So in the beginning, my personal thing, when I was tapping, I didn't really get much of a response. Like, my body wouldn't release as much as I would
Mm.
get, as I would sigh a little bit. That was all that I could get out of my body to start releasing. Now, the more I started tapping, the more I started getting, like, see, it's working, right?
Yeah.
You're yawning. So
Yeah.
even just not saying anything and tapping, and it will work, right? But
Mm-hmm.
when you're more prepped, like I know that you do it with clients, so you have experienced it, the more you do it, the more your body is ready to release. Like right now, when I do it, it's so easy for me to yawn, to like cough, like anything, like bigger releases, right? Tears streaming down while I'm yawning, like these, like my body's like, okay, I can really release. But that wasn't the case in the beginning. And a lot of my clients, when I just start working with them, they're like, well, I don't feel anything. I don't know where I feel it in my body. And when
Mm-hmm.
that happens, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It is a clue to you that you have disconnected so much from your body, and there is so much blocking you for protection, that you need to do more. It's really
Yeah.
all that it is. It's not a bad thing, but it is a clue that you are suffering with a lot more than you actually give yourself credit for, which is also means you're a lot stronger than you think. So it's all
Mm.
about just continue doing and continue tapping, and you will get the benefits out of it. Continue connecting with the body. I always like, with my clients when I work, whether in therapy or in coaching, really like to do some body meditations, like body scans just to really have them experience each individual part of their body just to see where they are in that journey, because they get all sorts of answers. Sometimes I get of like, well, it just felt nice. And I'm like, okay, well, you didn't really connect, but okay, it felt nice. I'm glad. Other times you get more honest answers of like, I had a really hard time connecting with any single part of my body, right? Like, couldn't make a connection. Other times it's like, I've had people who couldn't get through a body scan because they had so much emotion sitting in them that the moment we got to that body part, like their body was just like, the nervous system exploded. There would be tears flooding, like so much emotion coming through, right? So I always do that before starting my people on tapping, just so that they can get in touch with what their body feels like and start experiencing emotions in each one of their kind of centers where we hold emotions, which a lot of us do have it, like throats, right? Chest, stomach, shoulders, back, right? All of those are clues of where you're holding stress, anxiety, or trauma, or all of them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been so enlightening for people to learn about EFT. I think we covered a lot within that, and I hope that everybody will go and contact you or go try this and see how EFT works for themselves. Are you open to doing a quick speed round?
Sure.
Okay. Some of these things are not health related, just kind of for
Okay.
fun, and
All right.
answer first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Okay. All right. What's your favorite hobby?
Horseback riding.
Oh, fun. Okay. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Probably to not be so tired all the time.
Not be tired. Endless energy.
Yes, yes,
I would
that
love
was
that.
good.
If you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?
Oh, right now, I think I would really want to go to Hawaii. I haven't been in a really long time.
What island?
So I've only visited Kauai, so I'm open to any of them. Like, it
Okay.
was beautiful.
I still need to go. It's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
What's the best purchase you made in the last year that cost you under $100?
So I bought one of those shake plates when it was like on
Oh,
sale for $80, like the ones for lymphatic drainage
the
and everything.
vibration. Okay.
Yeah, the vibration plate. Oh my God, I love it. It's so awesome, especially on days when I feel too tired to work out, but I still want to get my body moving a little bit. Oh, been amazing.
Okay. And if you could leave the listeners with one tip that they could implement this week to help them live a healthier, happier life, what would that be?
I would say go outside. I know it's cold, and this coming from me who lives in Chicago, which is really cold, but
Mhm.
go enjoy as much sunlight as you can, especially in the winter right now.
Awesome. Go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you, how they can reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a website and it's parentonboard.com. And there you can find my freebie vault. And if you sign up for there, you can get access to my free EFT workbook, which has a tapping demonstration there. So you could follow that along, see what it feels like. I also hang out on Instagram, on Facebook, and on TikTok, and the handle is Parent on Board Coaching. And then you can also find me on Facebook through my profile, which is Maria Yakimchuk, and you can follow me along there as well. I post some stuff there. But yeah, those are kind of the places where you can find me.
Awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Maria.
Thank you for having me, Rachel.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like this video and comment, letting me know what you enjoyed and what you want to see more of. Also, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you get alerts when new content is coming out and you don't miss any videos. And just a quick reminder that this information is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any illness or medical condition. Please consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, exercise routine, supplements, or medical treatment. If you're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, please reach out to me. And thank you again for watching, and keep striving to become your healthiest, happiest self.